that spoke out to me. That spoke out to me. That stuck out to me for sure. Like, um, because it's kind of difficult when you don't really have a vision sometimes to know that you're still like in the right direction. So like even when you don't have like an actual, you don't have a okay, next step, next step, next step, you could still be in the right direction.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
in the interim of that, just make sure that you know you're doing what you can to stick out, because when you do finally catch traction and you know where you want to go, you've got some momentum behind you. So like what that looks like is doing the things that people are like, oh, you're a sellout if you do that, or you're doing too much for this company. If you got a direction and you know that eventually you're going to want to go somewhere, it's just a part of the game. It's something that you got to do. So I love that she said that, because like I felt that to the core. I know exactly what that looked like to me. So yeah, that was a gem right there.
I'ma be who I gotta be. I ain't living in your fantasy. I'll be real if it's the death of me. I'ma be who I gotta be, and I don't care who you pretend to be, cause I'll be real if it's the death of me. Yeah, liars are liars, they burning in fire.
Welcome to another edition of the Peace Podcast. We are at the dinner table. Pull up a chair, grab some food, a drink. If you're in the car, you don't have to do any of that. Feel free to just listen, listen, enjoy, keep your eyes on the road. But we are at the dinner table, okay? And today we're actually going to listen to a couple clips from Emily Wolfington's interview. If you have not checked out that interview yet, make sure you take the time. Go ahead and check it out. It should be somewhere right there. If you're a person who's like to skip to the end of the movie, you don't care to see the whole thing, you want the sneak peeks, the previews, et cetera, then hey, you're in the right place. Okay. Everybody else, go check out the podcast. We are about to jump into some of our favorite nuggets, points, clips from that video. So let's go ahead and get it started. Let's check out clip number 1.
I'm a big nerd about thank you notes.
That was my question.
And it doesn't have to be handwritten. It can be an email. It's the 21st century. But I do appreciate a thank you note. And again, when it's tied back to the conversation. So I just think about Carlos getting to know you. If I were to write you a thank you note, thank you, Carlos, for the time today. You shared a little bit more about connecting my profession to make it more relatable for your viewers and your listeners. And I really appreciate that. Or, when we were talking earlier, thank you for your service. Thank you for, and just making sure that I picked up on something about you in my thank you to show that I was listening and I care. So that, as opposed to thanks for the time today, which is still a very nice thank you. And here's what I really appreciated about our time together. I think really.
Yeah, this was important to me.
The thank you
Super
notes.
helpful.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I think she hit on the biggest point. Like, it's such a thank you note is such a small thing to do to one, to show your appreciation, but also to show that you listened, right? Like, always like reference something in the interview to say thank you, or like it just shows the interviewers that you paid attention, right? Especially if you can have a callback to something. Oh, I thought it was really interesting that you said this, like really appreciated this insight or something like that. Or even you can leave like a funny joke if you have a shared interest or something if it comes up. But thank you notes, definitely super impactful. It helps leave a good impression.
Yeah. I think it's funny that we we actually made this like one of the points. We didn't think about this at first, but like, thank you, Emily, for doing the interview. We got to figure out a special way to make sure we thank all of our interviewers for coming on the podcast. But yeah, the specialized touch point, like I feel like we hear that and it's tough to do, but like you said, Kenny, like it shows that you're listening, because if you can point out something very specific about that person, like for example, like family was a big thing to her. One of her goals was to make sure that she showed up for her kids. Like, yeah, showing that you care about the person, I think is one thing that could affect you getting the job.
Yeah. Even just like asking a question to expand on a topic or something, right? Like it just shows effort and it shows intention. Like, so it really doesn't have to be that difficult, or like you don't have to make it any more difficult than it is.
All right, send some thank you notes. When y'all get done with some interviews, make sure you send a thank you note. Shout out to Emily. We got a thank you coming your way. I think I'm going to take her to 10 West. So, I mean, if you're listening to this, hopefully I've taken you to 10 West by now. We should maybe take her to 10 West or something like that. That was her little mom and pop restaurant. Shout out to Emily. All right, y'all ready for clip number 2?
Let's run it.
Mm-hmm.
Except for different strategies.
Yeah. And sometimes you hear different stories because of laws now.
True.
State by state are so different. So, some states require that positions have their salary ranges posted, or, it's a part of their pay transparency, what they are aspiring for. And so I think it just kind of depends. And that's why there is so much variance on like, what's the best way. I don't know that there is a magic formula, but things that have worked for me. So turning the question around, great. So, and I'm a big fan of open, right? Like I'm open. So if this were me and I was asked, well, Leo, because you asked the question, well, what are your salary expectations? Well, I want to ensure that I find an organization that I feel valued and respected. So it's not just about salary for me. I'd like to understand total compensation. So I'm open to learn more. I'm open to take a job, but I'm open to learn more about what total compensation means. Because for me, my salary is a part of it. But if I don't have enough time off to be with my littles when they're sick, if I don't have the flexibility to leave at 4:30 so I make pickup time every day, because my husband does drop off, I have to be there for pickup. So like there are more things for me that go into total compensation. So I try to keep it open and focus on total compensation as opposed to just how much am I going to make?
Yeah.
But for some, they need to know that, right? Like, what's the hourly rate? What's the salary? So I think you just have to be really real with yourself on like, what are you trying to go off in after? But if I'm, again, like, I really is this a waste of my time, right? Like saying that can be said a lot nicer. And hey, I want to be respectful of both of our time through the interview process and just ensure that we're in the right ballpark. Can you give me some type of idea on what are the factors that go in to helping you decide what a candidate will make and what does that range look like? Because I will tell you more often than not, when we post a range, do you know what every person says?
The highest.
They should be at the top.
Yeah.
Which is not realistic. And so like, let's be real about that a little bit. Like as a candidate, I'm here to tell you, not every time do you get the top. So understand why. What goes into this? Do I understand what I need to do to then get there? So I think that shows the recruiter or the hiring manager, like you get it, you understand it's not always about like, I have to get here, but I do want to make sure I get there. So those are things that have been really helpful for me and that I've appreciated and have observed in some of the people that we've hired. And now we post our salary ranges, and then like in our own organization, we have salary, so grade levels, and then the salary bands at every grade level. Which that's a lot more transparent than some organizations, but it's funny. I've been at organizations where it's even greater transparency. So you just kind of got to figure out like what the feel is for your culture and what you look for. Like if Kendrick, if you were like, oh, Emily, I need to know what everybody makes in the organization for me to feel like it's a fully transparent organization. And I would have to be very honest and be like, well, we're not there yet. And we may not ever be there yet. So it's just thinking about like, what do you need to find, and how do you figure out how to learn that in the interview process and how you respond to, or you answer questions and then what those responses are.
So I'm gonna pause it right there. We keep going on a little bit, but I feel like she hit on a couple different things that stuck out to me. Number one, like how do you even approach it before the interview process, before you've talked to somebody on filling out the job application? Like how do you even answer that question? When a recruiter asks you what your expectations are, I guess, like how do you approach that? I thought that was really interesting because like it's turning the question back on them, which is probably intimidating for a lot of people. Like if somebody asks you a question, I think, and they have power, you probably feel pressured, like just give them the answer, don't turn it back on them. don't flip it, or pretty much just answer the question. How did y'all feel when she kind of said that?
I like the fact that she kind of broke down the pay band a little bit, because that variance there is really blurry. So just speaking to like the realistic piece, as far as like, everybody's going to say you should aim high, but actually look at your market value and leverage that as you're walking into the interview. So that was pretty valuable. And I actually, that was a nugget that I kept in mind myself. So shout out to Emily for that one. I took that one, storing that one in the piggy bank.
Yeah, I actually like the turn it around strategy.
Yeah.
It's hard to implement because you're never taught that. You're like kind of like what you were saying. You're always taught just to answer, right? But it's sometimes it can be a mistake just to say your previous salary, or
Yeah.
because I'm not saying that every company will do this, but like you'll get a company that sees that you're making less than what they expected to give you, and they'll only offer a little bit over what you could have, like what you make now. So you're missing out on a lot.
Yeah.
Not every company does this. Some companies, will pay you like market value just in good faith. But at the end of the day, like you have to have your own best interest at heart.
Yeah.
Which,
do y'all go ahead? Sorry.
I was going to expand on another point, was that like one thing I really liked about it is Emily kind of tied in what's important to her in terms of compensation, right?
Yep.
And that differs for everyone. Like it really, everyone needs to kind of figure out what's important to them. Like for her, I'm sure base pay is, that's, everyone cares about it, but for her, she really cares about flexibility, and she wants to be able to make time for her family. For people maybe in a different, to someone else who might not have a family, like what matters to them more is probably just making more money.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's really just you have to figure out what's more important to you, and then you can, if you're not happy with your initial offer, you can negotiate. And that's, I think we didn't touch about it in that interview, but you can negotiate to get closer to what you want. You might not get everything you want, but you can make like both sides can make a compromise.
Yeah. Figure out what that full package looks like. That's something I learned. I wouldn't say late on my career, because I'm still fairly early, but I didn't learn that pretty much as in the past couple of years, that like the actual full package. Emily might have taught me this, but the full package is what matters more so than just that one number. Once you become an adult per se, like, health insurance probably becomes important to you, or days off, like you said, like all that stuff kind of adds up. And if you're looking at other companies, there's a comparison in dollars too for that. For example, like if you get paid time off at one place or unlimited time off at another, then you can like technically see how many days am I getting paid off, and how does that calculate into what my paycheck will look like. Or health insurance. If a company is covering more of my health insurance than another, then that probably is coming out of my pocket somewhere else. So I didn't learn that until, like I said, fairly late, but it actually does account for way more than you would think. Bonuses, stuff like that too, is you could get a lower base salary at one and then get a higher bonus or something like that structure in another. And that could, if the company's paying out bonuses, that could be a big factor in your pay.
Yeah. And like retirement as well, right? Retirement accounts are big.
Yeah. Matching and stuff like that. Yeah. I was going to ask, like, what do y'all normally do, or how do you navigate this? I have like a strategy for myself on how I navigate this, but like, let's say for instance, a job offered you're making the base of what the range is for that job. They put it on the website or whatever. You're making currently the base of it, and you feel like you're missing a couple qualifications from the job to hit the top of the range. Do you still ask for the top? Do you ask for the middle, or do you try to like wiggle your way into just a little bit more than you're making because you're looking for a promotion? Like, how do you navigate that?
I think it depends. I mean, I think like when I go into a job interview, or just like the application process, even like I guess more so like negotiate. Okay, we'll start first step. First step, when I'm in the job interview process, when I get asked that question, I'll shoot for like the middle of the range, or like a little, or like a little higher than what I expected, right?
Yeah.
And you can always have a conversation too of like, you can gauge the conversation. You should be able to ask the recruiter like, well, like this is what I expect, and then you can also ask like, what does it look like to, like, what are the people who make the top range? What are their qualifications? Like, what does that look like?
Yep.
Like, what is the person in the top band? In the negotiation side of things, though, always have a number in mind that is like your floor of the number that you need to hit to be like, okay, I can accept this offer and I'm happy with it, right? And so like I think it's always healthy to have a set number in mind when you're in the job hunting process, so that way you're not just kind of like, you're going in with kind of a plan, so that way it helps with your negotiation. And like, you can't be upset if you hit your number, like, so you got your number, like that's what you wanted.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I do. Is I always go in, like you said, like that's number one for me on the list is, all right, meet the floor. If the company can't offer me the floor, then it doesn't matter what the job is. I pretty much, as at least in this stage of my life, I'm like, all right, I cannot continue in this. The next thing I do is, typically, I think everyone should do this based on where you are in life. If you have the leeway to look for jobs, then you should always ask for more. Whatever percentage you choose is up to you. But you should always ask for a little bit more if you have that time. And then the next thing I do is like, all right, cool. Let me look at the qualifications, see how I match up to these. And if I think that I've been doing the job, I'm asking for the top. And if the top is already what I'm making, then I'm still asking for more. Even though the range is there, I'm still going to ask for more, even if the range clearly says, and it's just like, yeah, this is what I expect to be able to do, or this is what I think that I deserve or earn or whatever.
Yeah, sometimes I don't like, if I keep this short, but like sometimes I don't like jobs where you're already at the top end.
Yeah,
because it's the growth could be limited.
Mm-hmm.
But it could be the right situation where you really want to be in that company, and you might have a pathway to promotion, right?
Yeah.
So like, that's also a strategy. Like, you could ask about that.
There also could be a thing where they're just putting up a range that's lower, hoping that someone will take the lower pay.
That's dishonest. Like, especially if you're like in Colorado where you're legally obligated to list your salary range.
Yeah.
Like, I think you have to legally follow that salary range.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that they should lie. I'm just saying, like, I have a feeling that some companies will put higher than they're actually willing to offer to grab better candidates. And then there's some companies that are putting lower than they're wanting to offer, hoping that they can snag somebody at a cheaper price. I bet you that's a strategy that some companies do.
It's plausible.
Yeah.
All right, what's that last clip?
You want to watch the last clip?
Unless Los, you got something to say about this one? We haven't heard your feedback.
No, yeah, I definitely it all, to me, what I thought about is what you said, Kenny. Like, it depends on the company that you're going after, and if they have like a reputation of being like somebody who honors market value. Because if so, then like you could essentially like go for what you want. You have your floor, you have that number that you want, and you don't have to play that lollipop game of, okay, I'm going to aim. You can just go straight in with the facts, quantified data, and ask for what you want. And essentially, I guess, but I mean, that's what I'm thinking about. So that's the approach that I take. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, I only go for places where I know that, like, okay, they know market value. I don't have to sit here and beef up myself and my resume and my technical skills here. So yeah,
for sure.
That's a good point. Good point.
All right, let's close this out and bring up that last clip.
Let's do it. I'm guessing you had a HR job that sold you on HR. There's a certain point in time where it was like, oh, okay, this is what I want to do.
It was a person. Yeah. I was with Kohl's department stores at the time, and I was a manager. And our store manager was like, I don't really want to do performance reviews. And he was sharing with me about like the stress and the anxiety of doing. And I was like, oh, I love that. I'll do our entire stores. And he was like, all 120. And I'm like, yeah, if that's what you want. He was like, seriously. And I said, yeah, for sure. And so I helped write them. And I mean, at that point, I knew everyone in our store and cared. So I was like, oh, I'll totally do it. And then there was a recruiting exercise. We were hiring for our overnight team. And he was like, oh, man, I can't get any of these jobs filled. And I'm like, I'll do it. And so, yeah, I think there were just a lot of times where what someone else didn't want to do, and I knew I could really help them out, I was like, well, I'll do it. So, and then those types of projects that I kept raising my hand for that everyone else hated, I really loved. And that's literally one of those moments where I thought to myself, quit fighting it and just think about it. So I met a person from the HR team at Kohl's, and I remember thinking, I want to be her when I grow up. And that's when I was like, okay, maybe I do want to do this.
So the clip was probably cut a little bit short, but pretty much what she was talking about, how she went from like career, different jobs and all that good stuff. And then eventually there was something that led her to wanting to be in HR, and she just kept raising her hand, and it led her to, something that she thought she was fighting before because of a stigma, and she's like, yo, like this is it. Got the opportunity.
Yeah. I think the biggest principle of that is like, especially when you're trying to prove yourself, or if you don't know what you want to do, like volunteer, like show that you're hungry, show that you're eager, show that you're willing to learn and to be able to do the job or different jobs. And it shows that you're reliable, and like you'll make a good impression on people around you, and you can find something that you like, just like Emily.
Yeah. My advice on this is, if you're young, as in 22-ish, maybe even older and below, to literally volunteer, whatever you can do for free at this time too. Do for free, just test it out, because you'll either find out what you really like or what you really don't like. Either way it goes, you'll figure it out, and the experience is a microcosm of that. And then on the other side, if you're older than that, if you're in your career and you can't sacrifice pay, then be willing to do extra. So it doesn't have to be for free, but be willing to like, all right, I'm going to try this out part-time, or I'm going to try this out in my free time, or whatever it is, so that I can either try it out again or I can get the experience. But like, be willing to raise your hand for things that are out of your scope. Be willing to say yes. And like Kenny said, be willing to volunteer. I think that's a lot of my successes coming from literally just saying yes to random things.
Yeah. And that spoke out to me. That stuck out to me for sure. Like, because it's kind of difficult when you don't really have a vision sometimes to know that you're still like in the right direction. So like, even when you don't have like you don't have okay, next step, you could still be in the right direction.
Yeah.
So in the interim of that, just make sure that you're doing what you can to stick out, because when you do finally catch traction and you know where you want to go, you've got some momentum behind you. So like, what that looks like is doing the things that people are like, oh, you're a sellout if you do that, or you're doing too much for this company. If you got a direction and you know that eventually you're going to want to go somewhere, it's just a part of the game. It's something that you got to do. So I love that she said that, because like, I felt that to the core. I know exactly what that looked like to me. So yeah, that was a gem right there.
Yeah. Also, like, say yes to things that you want to say yes to, because there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to ask you to say yes to something that they want from you. And they're not going to bat an eye about the time that you spend or how it doesn't help you. So like, say yes to things that you want to say yes to, because I'm telling you, people for the rest of your life will ask you to do things that you probably don't want to do. You're probably going to say yes to some of those. So yeah, good point. Go Lively. Cool. Thanks for joining us at the dinner table. Thank you again, Miss Emily Wolfington, for everything that you did for us. So, hey, get ready for the next episode, the next interview. It's going to be fire. Hey, peace. Pursue excellence and cherish everyone.
Wait. All right, you just enjoyed that episode. I know it because you've made it to this point. If you wouldn't do me and the fellas a favor, while you're joining us at our dinner table, you're having food, maybe you're on a run, wherever you're listening to the episode, please take the time, 1 second, hit like, subscribe, and we will see you on the next one. Peace.